Welcome to the Higher Ed Athletics Podcast. Today I'm joined by Nina King, Vice President and Athletic Director, Duke University. Nina, thanks for being on the Higher Ed Athletics Podcast.
Thanks, Travis. It's great to be with you.
I think everyone that's listening to this knows who Duke is from an athletic standpoint, but it's always interesting to hear how people explain the institution. So if you can just maybe profile the institution of Duke University, because you've been there a long time. Things I'm looking for is location, institution type, enrollment size, those types of things.
Sure. So Duke University is a private research university. We have a hospital system here as well. We're located in Durham, North Carolina. Durham folks get a little sideways when you call it Raleigh, Durham. We are not in Raleigh, just Durham. Our institution, we're just shy of 7,000 undergrads, and then we have a pretty robust graduate program, several different schools. And so we're almost over 10,000 graduate students. So a lot of buzz on campus, a lot of folks, employees. We're about 40,000 employees between academics and the health system as well. So an exciting place to be. We're coming up on a 100-year celebration of Duke University in the next few years. And so we're a relatively young university. I think that surprises a lot of people, just given kind of the Duke brand, but knowing that we're not quite 100 years old yet.
Yeah, it's this season of the podcast, which I've been recording all summer, and it's always interesting because people, I think, sometimes link the known size of athletic program to the institution. Where I was interviewing the athletic director at Delaware, for example, and they have a big school, and you would not even necessarily think of it as that. And then at Duke, it's in a Wake Forest, for example, similar to you all, very well known athletic brands, but not old or necessarily large institutions. So it's always interesting. I went to Duke when I was a kid, and I'll never forget, my oldest brother was a diehard Grant Hill fan. And so we had to stop, and he wanted to see Cameron Indoor Stadium. And I think the statute of limitations, if I get caught on this, is more than 10 years ago. We snuck into to Cameron, and he was able to shoot and touch the rim at the stadium. But I recently went back, and I was telling you before the recording, about hit a deer at night driving by the business school, trying to get close to see anything on my trip, and I felt it was an omen to get off campus. But such a beautiful part of the city, and just unique in the triangle, I guess you all call it, that I was able to see Duke, UNC, and North Carolina State within like an hour. So a very cool place that you all are at.
It is. And I'm happy that your brother got to come in the cathedral that is Cameron. It's a little tougher to get into these days. So don't worry on the statute of limitations. We'll forgive that entrance. But it really, Cameron is another kind of surprise to a lot of people at how small Cameron is. We can hold about 9,300 people. And so which is really cool. It creates that intimate atmosphere on game day, a little crazy for our crazies. But I think also a surprising fact, at least it was to me when I came to Duke for the very first time and saw how small Cameron is.
Yeah, just an awesome institution with a historic athletic brand too. And so I thank you again for being on. We'll jump into the questions. Before the AD position, you had served as a senior level administrator at Duke for several years. I'm always curious, in that type of position, what's it like going from a position of sharing advice and suggestions with your athletic director to then actually becoming that athletic director and being the one that is now, you're relying on information from your fellow colleagues, but you're now making the decisions for the most part for the athletic side. What was that transition like? And I'm guessing Mr. White had some advice there maybe for you as well.
Yeah. Well, the transition is, I think, kind of still happening. It's wild to me, wild and crazy that I sat behind the scenes for 13 years here, working hand in hand with Kevin White, and him obviously running the department. But I had a front row seat, and he is such a great teacher and mentor and leader, that I was able to learn from him for 13 years, and really he was preparing me, not necessarily to be the next AD of Duke, because who knows what would happen. But he was really preparing me to become a leader of an athletics program. And so when the job came open, I knew I could do it. It was just kind of, is this the step that I want to take? And here I am. I will say it's been a wild and crazy couple of months, but so rewarding. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity. The benefit in kind of being the internal person and having worked here for so long, all the colleagues that I was, sharing decisions with and advice with Kevin with before are still my same colleagues. And so we all know each other. We work really well together. And so that transition hasn't been tough, like trying to get to know the players and decision-making processes. But yeah, now I'm the person and I'm accountable for our decisions, making the decisions and then accountable for them, which is a lot. At times can be overwhelming. But again, just really exciting, and grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, and for those unaware, we're recording this on August 18th, and I think the official change is September 1st. Is that correct?
That's correct on paper. However, Dr. White did leave at the end of June and emailed our head coaches and our staff and let them know that he was effectively passing the baton July 1st. So in practice, I have been it since July 1, it's been great. It was, timing is always kind of tricky and challenging, but July 1st was a great point to do this. So we had some summer for me to kind of ease into this, and now students are starting to arrive back on campus. School starts next week, and so it's good that I'm kind of a little bit more settled than doing it, once everything's already started up for the school year.
Oh, I can imagine. So before I started at the school I'm at now, I was at University of Indianapolis, which is a D2, national powerhouse, and I want to talk a little bit about succession planning. We had our head men's basketball, football, and baseball coaches all retire and see their top assistant become the ultimate head position. And there was consideration given to the outside, but I talked to another athletic director recently that their philosophy has been similar, but I'm kind of curious with that succession planning. What was your initial reaction when Coach K informed you all about his retirement after the 21-22 season? And what was the thinking and philosophy behind really just building a succession plan to Coach Shire?
Great question. Can I curse on here? No. Listen, coach, an iconic coach, a legend that has done so much for the game of college basketball in general, and not just here in our country, but throughout the world. And he certainly earned the right to tell us when he was going to step away from this program that really he built into the iconic program that it is. So grateful to him for what he's done, and excited for the future of Duke men's basketball and frankly, Duke athletics. So, in terms of succession planning, listen, a good AD, good senior leadership team will always kind of have names in their back pocket. As we move through, seasons and doing our jobs, we're always window shopping and looking at who might be, potential candidates should a job come open. The Duke men's basketball job was not open until that day in May when Coach K told us that he was ready to step down after this coming season. And so it's not like, the past few years, as we had been looking, we knew when the opening was. So you're always just kind of surveying the market, seeing who's hot, who's up and coming, and really kind of trying to determine what the profile is of the person that you're going to bring in, depending on the sport, or the program or the situation. Is it a hot up and coming assistant coach? Is it someone that has head coaching experience? Is it D1? Is it, Power 5? Is it mid-major? For all of our programs, it's a different profile potentially that we're looking for. So, while we didn't know the exact time that Coach K was going to tell us that he was retiring, we've always been prepared, and always have kind of had names of who we would like to talk to or look at for this opening. We did a thorough search process. We didn't just look at John Shire and say, okay, you're it, good luck. We went through a process. We conducted interviews. We had an internal search committee. We utilized a search firm, for all of the groundwork and background information that we needed. And then we went through interview processes with the search committee, with myself and our outgoing AD, Dr. White, and with our university president. And really, like I said, it was thorough and very confident in the selection of John Shire. He earned the job. And so, the internal candidate, being an internal candidate myself, stepping into the leadership role, we present a lot of great factors. There's a lot of pros into being the internal person stepping into this role. But just as I had to do, John earned the job. So really excited. This year is going to be crazy, fun, celebrating Coach K. We've got a really good team this year, so I'm excited about watching us compete. And then the transition to the Coach Shire era will be really exciting after this season is over. So a lot of things happening. The timing was crazy to me. 1 week I was appointed AD, and the next week we were hosting press conferences to announce Coach K's retirement and John Shire's hiring. But really pleased just with how it all worked out.
Yeah, and the other AD that I talked to about this, and then my experiences at UIndy when we went through this, was if someone's retiring and they've created a good culture and the department has a good culture, you want to do your due diligence, which it sounds like you all did, looking outside and then internally. But it's almost like if it's not broke, don't fix it. But if it's also just such a good culture and you still have a big team chemistry issue there, and the Duke brand or the UIndy brand, whatever it is, it's if you do your due diligence, then I think the succession plan means something's working, and if that person can take on the role. And similar to your position, we had the same thing where our compliance director took over the AD job, and it was kind of understood that when she retired that he would step in because he, for one, knew everything internally about that, but also it just seemed like if it's not broke and we're winning and everyone's enjoying themselves, it is kind of risky to just tear that up just because someone's retiring. Is that kind of another thought process that went through your head?
Yeah, that for sure. And then let me add another piece to it. As an administrator, I'm very proud of building the bench and creating a pipeline. And so, when we make a hire here, no matter what position it is, whether it's an intern, an entry level, a senior leadership position, assistant coach, head coach, we are investing in our people and building our pipeline and in folks personally and professionally. And so if we've already invested time, resource, mentorship, in our current internal folks, wouldn't we like to see them ascend into, the highest leadership chair possible here? And so I think that's just kind of another element in terms of internal succession, the pipeline that we're building. When our folks here are looking to go get jobs other places, and we want to make sure that we've done everything we can here for them professionally to grow and be able to take on upward mobility and hopefully here understandable if it's other places. But it is about investing in folks' professional lives here at Duke.
Yeah, the whirlwind there that you had to go through is when I had Bubba Cunningham on, we actually recorded it and posted it like I think 48 hours after that he went through his whole search too. So that was always just coming from a very similar position. But I'd say you all handled it really well, and I'm excited to follow along too. And I want to keep with the same theme just a little bit, but different questions. A lot of people that listen that I've heard from are senior level administrators at the D1 level, just based on the people I interview. And, I don't know if it's pandemic related or similar to what we just talked about, but it seems more AD hires have recently come from being hired within the institution, whether it was an interim role, then permanent placed, or just someone on the staff and deputy position, things like that. So for those listening that might end up one day in a similar position, or they might be wanting to do that, how did you decide to adjust the roles of your administration team once you actually became the AD? Because you had said your colleagues, were most of them are still there, and I believe one just got announced as an AD at another institution when we're recording this. But how did you help maybe adjust those? Because I think you did make some changes to tweak your administrative structure, right?
Yes. So no big structural changes. So even though I have been here for 13 years, now I am in a different position and in the leadership position. So I really do want to take some time to kind of see how this is kind of all going to shake out, right? So what I did immediately, the beginning of the transition, I had my senior deputy AD duties that somebody needed to do as I assumed the VP AD role. And so I kind of doled out my responsibilities, if you will. I didn't replace me, the position with the responsibilities. I gave out my responsibilities to our current existing executive staff. So a few here, a few there, just kind of spread it around and then change some titles for folks. But our executive staff, our senior leadership team, we were 11 folks plus the AD, and now we're 10 folks plus the AD. I didn't fill my position. Now, next year, we know we have one retirement on our senior leadership team, and we may have some more movement. You mentioned one of our folks that just got an AD job. We've got other people that have aspirations to become athletic directors. And so we may have some more movement next year. So this current year, I'd like to just kind of take some time and figure out what the ultimate structure is. I know we need to add some both gender and racial diversity on our team. I'm not content with our makeup at this point. And so, maybe we have some opportunities to add some senior level positions, but I hope it comforted our folks that I didn't come in and make some changes, because I know that, as we were saying before, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We are, and prior to me stepping into this role, a highly functioning senior leadership team, and doing well together. And so we're going to continue that well into the future, but going to take this current year to kind of figure out what do we look like moving forward.
That sounds like a great plan. One of these, this might be something you decide to do in the future again, but the chief of staff position in college athletics is something that I've spoken to several people this summer about. So for a class project in my doctoral program, I actually did a 45-minute conversation with our president's chief of staff, and she had gone through the same doctoral program too, and had been in the position for like a decade. And so I've been really curious about this, how people are going to use these chief of staff positions moving forward. And I think job titles can be a little confusing in college athletics. But when you're thinking as someone that was a chief of staff and you were doing that role probably before you were even named the chief of staff, is there a separation of what you either did or you're looking for in a chief of staff? I've heard similar things as like it's an extension of the VP or the AD that maybe separates from just that deputy role or that senior associate of internal ops or things like that.
Sure. I laughed when you said that college athletics titles are confusing, because my goodness, they are. And I'm someone who likes structure and trying to understand org charts, and I can't figure it out because it's not apples to apples from athletic department to athletic department. But, titles are really a way for us to be creative. We don't pay a lot in college athletics, for our administrators. And so it's a way for us to kind of, recognize contributions and responsibilities in a non-monetary way. but yeah, they are all over the place, and can get out of control a little bit. But chief of staff, I don't know if Kevin White was the first, but I would say probably one of the first. He has always been kind of a creative, visionary, forward thinker in college athletics. And so when we came to Duke, I was with him at Notre Dame prior, and I was in compliance. And he asked me to join the team here, and I said, I'll do anything but compliance. Sorry, I just had enough. And so he said, great, you're going to be my chief of staff. And I said, what the heck does that mean? I'd never heard of it in college athletics. And so it was really exciting. We kind of got to chart my path together and kind of figure it out together, because he had never had one before either. And so for us and our working relationship, it meant one thing. For here, it was, I really was kind of his right-hand person, and I worked with him on everything behind the scenes. And we called it kind of air traffic controller, making sure the airplanes came in and took off on time, sitting with our exec staff and our senior staff, and making sure that action items gotten taken care of and follow-up happened. And so kind of that person to just, check the completed box in a lot of things. I did promote someone into the chief of staff position here, working with me, but I think it'll be different. I am a different athletic director than Kevin was. Kevin had years of experience. I think this was his 6th AD job. And so he knew how to do the job really well. And he was happy to kind of sit back and let the rest of us team lead together and learn together. For me, I don't have that luxury yet. I am a first-time AD. I need to be doing a lot of things myself, and won't be able to delegate everything that Kevin was able to do. So I really envision using the chief of staff a little bit different. But what it does mean for me is somebody that's with me that kind of understands all the moving pieces, campus players, our constituents outside of Duke within college athletics, and really understands how we can be most efficient and effective in running this athletic department. So I'm excited. A new chief of staff, the new chief of staff, I shouldn't say the Duke Athletics new chief of staff is Todd Mezebov, a longtime Duke Athletics employee, our top compliance officer. He is a lawyer. He's really smart, quick thinking, just really excited to have him on the team and to be able to do this together with him.
One thing I would just ask is, you said that, your chief of staff position was probably different than everyone else's in college athletics, and with title changes, it could come up and be different somewhere else. For other newer ADs or existing for a while ADs that are considering a chief of staff position, coming from a role that did those types of things, what would you tell them to be looking for in making that decision on whether they think that they needed to have a chief of staff? Sure.
I mean, I think, like I said, it's somebody that is kind of right by your side, that understands the moving pieces. My goodness, there are so many in college athletics right now. And so to just kind of understand how this whole enterprise works, and to help position your athletic department to be successful in the changing collegiate athletic landscape. So, when I was thinking about how we were going to potentially restructure and, who I would give kind of that chief of staff duty to within our athletic department, I did think about, do I want, somebody that is young, breaking into college athletics, and learning the business and trying to grow in the business. And so here I would kind of help them in their career, launch their career, or do I want an experienced, understands this place and this business type of person? And I really felt like I wouldn't have the time as a first year AD to mentor for a person that is trying to learn and grow at this point. I mean, I do hope to eventually, do that. Like I said, I love building the pipeline and paying it forward to people in our business who have big aspirations. But I just felt like at this point in my tenure as an AD, I needed somebody who would be ready to hit the ground running with me. It's somebody that frankly helps prepare me walking into meetings, whether it's on campus or out in the community or in the athletics community, that behind the scenes person that, maybe says before I give a speech, hey, you might want to touch on this, or you might want to say this, because we're all going a million miles an hour here. And so just somebody to kind of help ground all of it, and make sure that we're not letting anything fall through the cracks, and firing on all cylinders all the time. It's a big job. And I know it because I did it. But I'm really excited for Todd. And so, for folks that are looking to potentially hire a chief of staff, really everyone's needs are different. What is it that you need to help run your department effectively and efficiently, and to be the very best high performing athletic department that you can be? What need can that person fill for you?
Thank you. I think that's great advice. And the chief of staff role is just something that I'm going to continue to kind of dig into, both in higher education, like what president's ones do, and have them with some type of content for higher ed athletics to bring in more of that role, because I think it's going to continue as a trend. And I personally think maybe it's a skill set of a compliance person likes that behind the scenes role, because you're doing a lot of the work that you're doing behind the scenes work, but it's also very critically important. Compliance, you have to know everything about the institution, really. What about law school really prepares someone for these types of senior level positions? Not just the AD chair, but you just said that your new chief of staff also is a legal person. What do you think that skill set that you learned is applicable to college athletics? Because we're starting to see a lot more ADs come from the compliance ranks as well, in law school ranks.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say I'm a lot of fun at a cocktail party, an accountant and a lawyer. What could be better? But listen, the law degree has served me really well. Obviously, you don't have to be a lawyer to do any of our jobs in a collegiate athletic department. But the foundation that it provided me was absolutely great and invaluable. Law school is a whole different beast now, especially coming from a business background. But I really, I learned a lot while I was there. Great foundation, helps with critical thinking, communication, writing. There's a lot of writing in law school. And I think that's something that I did a lot in my chief of staff position, and obviously will continue to do as an athletic director. Effective communication and really clear writing skills, very helpful. I went into law school knowing that I was going to come back into college athletics. I took some time off in between undergrad and law school. And so I didn't feel pressured to find that big firm job, or, spend my summers working in a law firm to get an offer for post-law school. So I think I was, I didn't feel as much pressure as a lot of my law school classmates did while we were in school. And so, I don't know, I think I was able to enjoy the experience a little bit more, especially since I went to law school in New Orleans. Go Tulane. But I think it brings, it gives folks a unique and diverse perspective. We've got a lot of people in college athletics that get advanced degrees. I do think that they're very helpful, but there's such a variety to choose from. Students ask all the time, should I go get my master's? Should I go get an MBA? Do I go to law school? What should I do? All of those programs have their own strengths and provide different skill sets. And so it's really, what are you passionate about? What do you want to spend time and money in grad school doing? Because they'll all serve you well in this business. And so for me, I was interested in learning about the law. I was passionate about the law, and really just a great educational experience, and one that I would do over every time. Really just enjoyed it. And frankly, a differentiator. So many people want to work in college athletics. And so how are you going to differentiate yourself from the zillions of people that are applying for jobs all the time? And there just aren't that many from law school coming into college athletics. So for me, it was something to set myself apart from everyone else.
Well, just knowing what all is facing college athletics right now, having the legal training whether it's conference realignment, NIL, or whatever is next, It's a big reason why people ask me when I'm doing a doctoral program, they assume it's in sports. Mine's actually a higher education EDD program because I really wanted to learn about higher education. I have a master's in athletic administration, and that's great too. But at some point, you got to try to differentiate yourself, but also just curiosity of learning more about college administration and how athletics plays into that. So I appreciate you saying that's a differentiator for yours too. And I don't think there is a one size fits all. Like I think I could do compliance with the best of them, and I didn't do a law degree, but I also one of the people I work with, he's one of the best writers I've ever seen, and he went to law school, and that's why he credits being a good lawyer. So that's good. I want to switch to school as a professor. So I'm not sure it's in your title on the directory, and I know in the past you taught a sport business class, and I always is it the Fuqua School of Business?
Yep.
And as part of Duke's MBA program, I know Dr. White was an instructor in that as well. So are you still going to be teaching that? And then if so, what type of content and topics do you like to bring to the classroom, and what excites you about having that role? Because it's not necessarily something a lot of ADs do. I've seen several do it recently that I've even talked to on the podcast.
Yeah. So Dr. White and I always co-taught together since we've been here at Duke. So he has always been a professor at every institution that he's been an athletic director at. So 30 plus years of teaching in higher education. And so he continued when he came to Duke, and we did it together once I got here with him at Duke. And so we teach a sports business class in Fuqua. And are going to continue to do so. So he has obviously retired from college athletics, and he is a full-time professor over at Fuqua. And he asked if we could continue to teach together, and I said absolutely. So this semester our class is Mondays at 4. I told him I'd be over to Fuqua every Monday by 2:00 so we could discuss my problems of the week. I'm just really excited to still get to see him once a week and to be able to utilize him as a resource, just because he's so terrific and has so many great thoughts about our business. But in terms of our class, so obviously both the two of us have only ever worked in college athletics. And so we teach the class from sports business is the class, and we teach it from a college athletics perspective. But then something really great, I think, that we do is every class session, we bring in a guest speaker also from somewhere in the business. And we try not to have too many folks from college, but just people from the TV business, professional sports, Olympics, just all kinds of areas around the sports industry to share their perspectives, not career path necessarily, but really business perspectives with the students. And I think that's worked out really well because Kevin and I can't teach to that. We can't teach to the business of the NBA. So Adam Silver comes to class and he teaches about the business of the NBA with our students. So it's been really exciting. I mean, we talk about all of the applicable business principles, marketing, human resources, leadership, administrative theory. We talk about all of the topics, but applied in a sports perspective, which has been really neat. So that's what we're doing. Yes, I do gratefully. Fuqua is so wonderful to provide me the adjunct professor title and still get to go over there and teach. And I have to get used to it. We used to just teach in the spring semester, but now that Kevin is a full-time professor, we're teaching year round. So we'll see. I mean, first year AD, Coach K retiring, still chairing the women's basketball committee, the NCAA women's basketball committee, and now full-time almost teaching both semesters with Kevin. But it's great. I'm excited to do it.
Well, he's got more time to take on the syllabus and a lot more of the lesson planning than you. And that's such a cool, a lot of people don't realize this also that it doesn't really surprise me because his son, Danny White, has a doctorate. And I kind of point that out of just being someone that's, working in college athletics, pursuing a doctorate. He's one that I've looked to as, an innovator and also very focused on higher education because his is a higher ed one too. And so not that surprising to see Dr. White who also is a doctor, is continuing to teach at Duke. And what a luxury for the students in that MBA program. I mean, hopefully they're aware of what they get. I had Ray Anderson on, and I can say this because his last name starts with an A, so he'll be one of the first ones. But he teaches in sports law appointment at Arizona State, and John Curry at Wake Forest. The AD, I think he teaches at a different school, but he teaches and he's on Twitter about that. But I just think it's so cool to that you all are continuing to do that. And you kind of mentioned one thing in there that led to my next one is that you are on the still going to be the chair now of the D1 Women's Basketball Committee. So that's where I want to kind of go next as we kind of round third on this third base on this interview is coming from last year, and everyone knows of the documented challenges that happened with the men's and women's tournaments. But some exciting news before we recorded this that the women's tournament will now start using March Madness as well. But what are you looking to see in the tournament from your perspective of what you all can do as the chair of that committee? What are you looking for this upcoming year for the 21-22 academic year?
Not documented challenges, not challenges that we experienced last year. Listen, last year was really tough. The pain point at the tournament, the exposure into the gender inequities was horrific. And I felt horrible for the student athletes that felt that they were, being treated undervalued and being treated inequitably. I shouldn't say felt that, they were. And so I am grateful to Kaplan and Hecker for conducting the gender equity report. I think we've got a great blueprint for moving forward. They have some really solid, robust recommendations, many of which are not new. We have seen recommendations coming out of white papers and reports before, but I think this time we are all committed to change and taking action. We don't have time to sit on the sidelines this time and say, okay, these are great. Who's going to do them? And just kind of sit around and wait for people to change really deep systemic changes into how women's sports are treated within the NCAA. So, like I said, last year was tough. I am proud of the NCAA staff and the 64 teams that came to San Antonio. We had a great tournament in terms of basketball. The competition. It was so exciting. It was fun to be in one place for the whole tournament. Tough to be away from home for a month, but a really exciting tournament relative to basketball and the level of play. I mean, women's basketball has come so far, and it is growing exponentially. So, what do we hope to see this year? Change. We hope to see a elite high level experience for those 64 teams that are invited to the national championship tournament. We're not asking to bring men's basketball down or the level of their experience down at all. Rather, just bring the women up to the level that the men are, and in creating an equitable experience. Everything doesn't have to be exactly the same, but the experience needs to be equitable. And so the decision makers have heard us. The decision makers are ready. And so really looking forward to enacting recommendations coming out of the Kaplan report for the good of women's basketball and frankly for women's sport, not just with basketball in our country. So it's going to be an exciting year. We're all kind of returning to some sort of normal, whatever that looks like in this 21-22 year. The women's Final Four will be in Minneapolis next year. And so we've already started working with the local organizing committee and we can't afford for it to be anything less than a spectacular experience from selection weekend through national championship night. It's going to be amazing. I am very proud of the women's basketball committee. We've got a great group. The committees, both men's and women's basketball committees, just expanded from 10 members to 12. And so I've got 11 colleagues that I'm working with this year to make sure that we select the very best and create an incredible bracket. After selections, kind of hide my phone so I don't have to hear from folks on why this seed and why are we being sent here. But just really proud of the work that the committee does really all year. I mean, it is a time intensive endeavor to watch games all year and really, be in tune to what's going on in women's basketball, and then arrive at selections. And like I said, pick the 64 best. But it's a rewarding experience. I'm so grateful to be a small part of the women's basketball community. And it's going to be fun watching going forward, how we can make this just the best.
The tournament itself, once the basketball got playing, it was arguably better than men's basketball tournament. Like when you think about games, they were both good, but I mean, I'm a little biased because our team at IU made it to the Elite Eight, and I was really hoping for, a Final Four berth. But our women the whole year at IU basketball for the last several years have been so fun to watch. And so that was a kind of another bummer why we couldn't have fans during the regular season. But we're so excited about our team and just the product of women's basketball finally getting, I think, on the stage that it was. And recently is when you talk about purely the sport, it's come a long way as far as like people buying in that, wow, if we actually put this on TV, people will watch. The ratings, I don't remember off the top of my head, you might, but they were really strong coming out of the entire tournament.
Huge. And this year, this past tournament, we had a commitment from ESPN to put every game on linear TV. And previously we had seen, games were regionalized and you'd get whip around coverage and a game might be, really good. And then all of a sudden it cuts out and goes to another game that's starting. And so this year and moving forward, ESPN is committed to putting all tournament games from start to finish on digital platforms within ESPN. And then we also saw they put some of those games on ABC. Which is absolutely incredible to put women's basketball on network television like that. And like you said, the ratings were incredible. Prior to this year, our last tournament where we did have fans, we were having record attendance and just really excited to get back to that and get our fans in the building because the atmosphere that it creates for our student athletes competing is just incredible and exciting. And yes, IU, so great. The Big Ten has really great, strong basketball, and it was fun to see IU perform so well this year. So congrats to the Hoosiers.
Nina King, Vice President and Athletic Director, Duke University. Thanks so much for being on the Higher Ed Athletics podcast.
Thanks, Travis. This was fun. Good to see you.